Time to build your world. In today's world building video, we are going to talk about what makes your world unique and memorable. What brings the setting for your world to life? The world needs to be as dimensional as the characters and narrative that occupy it. I'm going to go over a few things that could help you create a world that feels alive and leaves a lasting impression on your readers. Because today is all about building vivid and immersive settings. Anyway, building unique and memorable settings. The whole thing is about creating a unique and memorable setting because this is a rewarding aspect for not only the readers, but you. You get to see the world living, come alive. And a well crafted setting isn't just a backdrop for the narrative, it's a character. It's a character in its own right, a place that adds depth and richness to the narrative and helps readers fully immerse themselves in the world that you've created and spent some time on. A memorable setting can invoke emotions, create atmosphere, and provide context for your characters and their journey. But how do you build a setting that stands out and stays with readers long after they've put down your book? The whole thing is all about creating something that is uniquely yours. I mean, Star Wars didn't exist before Star Wars, even though it was based off of Dune and a couple other things, Buck Rogers. uh, Star Wars became its own world. And that happened through the setting, creating the species, creating the society, creating how ships work. And, every element of Star Wars became its setting, just as every element of Dune became its setting. I mean, with the War of the Machines and stuff like that, which probably influenced Terminator. And even Terminator had its world setting. Okay. So, but Thomas, how do I build a unique setting? That's a great question. To build a unique setting, you should start. You should start by thinking about what makes your world different and then expand from there. Whether your story takes place in a bustling city, a mystical forest, or a remote desert, ask yourself what sets this place apart. Because if I'm from an island, it could be Long Island. Long Island in New York is an island. So, oh, you're an islander. Well, technically, yes, I am an islander, right? Um, but if you grew up in Hawaii or the Philippines, these are all very different cultures, different experiences, and different worlds. Uh, s- so, what makes yours different? Look for elements that give your setting personality, an unusual climate, distinct architectural styles, unique flora, a fauna, or a cultural quirk that is integral to how people live their daily lives. The more specific it can be, the more vivid and interesting your setting will become. Uh, you want to consider how your setting's unique characteristics affect the people who live there. How do they adapt? What customs or traditions have emerged? And what challenges they face, etc. On Long Island, everybody goes out to Riverhead. The Hamptons is all about being wealthy. There was a bar out there that everyone went to, and they got all the stickers, and like that was a big thing. There's the lighthouse. There's the Big Duck. There's a huge duck on Long Island. Um, these are things you have to be thinking about that make the area unique. And for Long Island, that makes it unique. But Long Island's also broken up into Montauk, the Hamptons, Riverhead, Suffolk. Then there's Nassau, and then of course at the very end or the beginning, depending on how you look at it, Brooklyn and Queens, which is part of the five boroughs, which are indeed on Long Island. And those are all different cultures and atmospheres, and they're different lifestyles and different experiences. Um, if I was writing a book, those each would have to represent different feelings. When you're in Nassau, it feels completely different than Suffolk, and you're like, but they're on the same place. Yeah, but one is closer to the city and it's more congested, and Suffolk is a little bit more open, right? But it does have that sort of like you know feel. It has a feel to it. However, the farther you get out to Montauk, the less city it feels. So these are things you have to think about when you're building your world, is like regional elements, uh you know and they literally could be anything you want. That's the genius That's the genius. And that brings us to what we know with a twist. What we know with a twist. Expanding your setting can begin with what we already know as a society, right? Like the way oceans influence our world. But what if your ocean was made of something entirely different, like lava? But Thomas, that would kill people. Not if your inhabitants have adapted to it. Maybe they have heat resistance physiology or have developed technology to navigate these treacherous seas. Or consider taking a familiar concept and inverting it. What if your world had vast bodies of water separating small stretches of land, forcing people to live in the oceans? Okay. Imagine a society that has evolved underwater, complete with underwater cities and transportation systems. We've seen this already in stories, right? So think about how this twist changes their culture, the architecture, and even their perspective on life compared to land dwelling societies. Now, taking something familiar and giving it an unexpected twist can lead to a unique and memorable setting that feels both grounded in reality and refreshingly new. It's all about asking, what if? And letting those questions guide you to create settings that feel original while still relatable. One of the things that you can do about taking something like a dog, right? You go, here's a dog. But what if dogs could talk? Oh my God, that would be the greatest world. And well, would it? Because they know all our secrets, don't they? They listen, they watch, they judge. But dogs, imagine they could talk. Or maybe your dogs, they're big. Maybe they have three eyes. Maybe they have two tails. It's just little things like that that change it up. Maybe their hair are feathers, right? So it's it's as simple as thinking, well, what do we know? And then how do I adjust it? Okay. Maybe cows are meat eaters. Like you can literally do anything you want. Now, a world with dimensions and depth, a great setting is also about sensory details. Think about how the place looks, smells, sounds, feels, and even tastes. Sensory descriptions help bring your setting to life. This allows readers to experience it alongside your characters. Is the air thick with the scent of spice from the market stalls? Does the distant howl of wolves echo through the mountains at night? These details can transform your setting from something abstract into something readers can vividly imagine. Now, keep in mind, when somebody eats something, remember you have world food. So just because they're eating a steak doesn't mean it tastes like our steaks, doesn't mean it's made with the same kind of spices as our steaks. There was a really great note that one of my alpha readers gave me, and one of the kids I mentored, who has grown to be very successful in his own mind in the film industry and television. And he said, he goes, there's this one scene where the character hasn't eaten in a long time. And so, without giving away anything, he's given a bowl of beef stew. And the way he eat, because he hasn't eaten in a long time, he's every element of that food he's tasting. He's just, he's not even eating like normal. He's just, right, just drinking it down. And I described it. And at the end, my buddy was like, first of all, I wanted to make some beef stew directly after reading that chapter. And my mouth was watering. And he goes, it's beef stew. But what if you added an ingredient that was from your world? Just that would be like one of those. And he goes, no pun intended, but it would spice it up. And I was like, oh, that's such a great opportunity to build on the world without distracting from the narrative or going into exposition. Just add, the whatever the spices of so and so nadragas, right, are there. And it's like, oh yeah. And that was a missed opportunity on my part, because I was just thinking, like, what does beef stew taste like, and what would the character be noticing, because they were, and I liked it. It was a great note. And that's one of the things you should be thinking about, is even just food alone. Beer doesn't have to be made the same way it is in your world, especially if it's fantasy or sci-fi, or even if it's based on historical fiction. Beer could have evolved differently, right? The foods that we do eat, maybe people in your world don't eat foods we eat. And that's why, like in Star Wars, you see them eating weird foods or drinking weird things, right? It's all, you can literally make up anything. All right. And it's important to think like how that involves interaction, What about an active setting? You know, how does the setting itself play an active role in your narrative? Instead of being a static backdrop, your setting should interact with your characters and influence the plot. Maybe the city has a labyrinth of streets that force your character to confront dangers lurking in the alleys, or a stormy coast that adds urgency to their journey. Your setting can provide obstacles, often refuge, or offer refuge, or even symbolize something about the character's inner struggles. When your setting is woven into the narrative, it becomes integral to the narrative rather than just the place where the events happen. Now, you don't have to do this all the time, but it's something to think about. How do you create a narrative world? Brandon Sanderson obviously did this with by the storm gods or whatever, Stormfather. But the storms, those like storms that are really powerful and last forever, and then those influence the gems, and then there are people that can manipulate. Anyway, so you could think like that. How is the world a living entity that exists and is so uniquely magical to this world? How does it influence it? And those are important. I would also say history influences the present. Consider how history and culture has shaped the setting of the present within your story. Every place has a past, and that history impacts how it looks, feels, and functions in the present. Sorry. What major events had shaped this place? Are there landmarks or ruins that speak? I should say ruins. Are there ruins that speak to long forgotten era? Are there cultural traditions or superstitions that have developed over time? There are generational thoughts. A great grandparent, right, might have experienced something or have different kind of superstitions than say your that character's mother or father. By layering in these historical and cultural elements, you're going to naturally add depth to your setting and create a sense of truth. Remember, we're always trying to find the truth within the narrative. And it makes it feel like a real place that is lived in and has the quality of being alive. Okay. As some examples, okay. Examples from novels that build unique settings. So if we look at how to build a unique setting, right? The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. The Shire is a peaceful and pastoral region that feels distinctly different from other parts of Middle Earth, especially Mordor. Or the dwarves, right? In rolling hills, cozy hobbit holes and simple way of life reflect the character of the hobbits and set a stark contrast to the more dangerous parts of the world. The Shire's unique elements, such as hobbit customs, meals, and community spirit, create a vivid and memorable setting that feels both unique and comforting, contributing significantly to the tone of the story and overall the twist of that story and how everything gets destroyed. And even, you know, well, the book and the movies are different, but in the book, the Shire gets attacked at the very end, and you realize that not everything is safe. Right? Um. Anyway, so I'm gonna skip around because some of these are. All right, so I know this is 4. I'm skipping 2 and 3, but active. So on the Name of the Wind, the university in the novel is not just a backdrop, but an active part of a Kovath and his story. It's a labyrinth of archives, his rivalries among students, and mysteries that all add challenges and opportunities and have emotional weight to Kavath's experience. Now, the setting actively influences the plot by presenting obstacles and shaping the growth, Kavath's growth, making it a memorable and essential part of the story. And of course, everybody knows that A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin, the history of Westeros is a deep part of the present state. Major events like Robert's Rebellion, which we don't get to see because it happened before the book started, the Targaryen conquest, which we don't see because the building of the wall. All these things shape political landscapes, alliances, and conflicts. The first men, the Andals, things like that. And the remnants of history, from old castles to family grudges, are ever present in the story. And this creates a rich and authentic setting where past influences are felt deeply by every character and affected by the narrative's movement in the present. Now, ultimately, building a unique and memorable setting requires creativity, attention to detail, and understanding of how the environment shapes the world. When done well, a setting can draw readers into the world and make them feel like they're truly there, walking the streets, hearing the sounds, etc. One thing that you should be doing is starting small. If you start small, you can build big. Because one area can turn into two area, can turn into 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and now there are 9 places. If you give yourself time to develop an idea, let's say just starting with fruit and not even fruits, just let's say an apple, but now we call them papples, right? And you have a papple, and the papples were actually brought here by the ancient rats, right? So the papples were brought here by the rats, and the rats come from the south, or whatever, and probably the Great West that has never been searched, and it was hundreds of thousands of years ago. So you worship, you pray to the rats as like sort of a traditional thing whenever you eat them because of the blessing they gave to this land. And that is world building. Now you go, all right, who are the rats? And that turns into something. Maybe they were conquerors, but like we don't know that in the presence. We just celebrate the papples. And that's how you start building on world. You just make stuff up, literally. But you start small. Papple, the rats, people, they give a little blessing before they eat the paps, in respect to the gift that the rats have brought, and that's it. And then now you get to go, oh wow, I have the rats I could kind of actually explore if I wanted to in another story, or maybe they do have a history. Maybe I could think about that. But because it's all made up, you don't have to do it right there. You can let it narratively influence your storytelling, your plot, and your narrative and your story, right? Anyway, that's what I have to say. Next video, creating rich and diverse characters within your world. Okay. Question: what elements do you like to focus on most when building your setting? Let me know in the comments below. If you haven't done so already and you like what you've been watching, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out. Other than that, as always, keep developing the right mindset. I'll see you next time. Bye.